invitation to speak on this most holy day, Easter. And I was raised as a Baptist. I am currently still ordained with the Baptists, and I know what it is to give up the pulpit, especially on Easter. And it truly was an honor to be invited to speak here today. And not only that, to be invited to speak in uniform and as a chaplain in the Canadian Armed Forces. I know that I truly am among friends here today, and it truly is a high honor to be here with you, and I know that I'm friends. I bring greetings from a number of people this morning, from the commander of CFB Shiloh, where I served, Lieutenant Colonel David McIntyre, our base chaplain, Major Les Johnston, and the congregation of St. Barbara's Protestant Chapel, where I serve. Now, I have a few mementos I want to leave with you as well, so if I could invite you and Father Paul.
You could be my agent. I promise you'll pass them along.
So we have here an explanation of St. Barbara. I'm going to explain this a little bit more in just a moment, but we have a plaque each for Father Paul and Bishop Millsaps. And so we want to give those to you, and as well as a Canadian Army coin. And there's only one way to pass this along, and that's, there we go, in the handshake. Let me come down and pass this along to you as well.
Thank you. You've been blessed. Yes, we know. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And, I'll leave these.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
So let me explain a little what I do and where I come from. I've been married to Jan for 27 years. It's starting to sound like a big number. We have two boys. They're going to turn 24 and 22 coming up in the next month or so. The oldest is a forestry engineer. The youngest is going to graduate from our alma mater, now called Crandall University, next month with a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology, and he wants to go on to become a clinical psychologist, so he has high and lofty ambitions. I spent 20 years in civilian pastoral ministry before coming into the forces 4 years ago. I came in directly as a captain and through a direct entry program for chaplains, and but I still had to do officer's basic qualification, so it's the same as any other, or more or less the same as any other officer, except that in Canada, chaplains don't train with weapons. I don't know what the case is down here. We unload and make safe, we do those drills, but that's about it, and after that, we just ask some sergeant on a little bit. It's much safer that way. In Canada, chaplains can serve in any branch, Army, Air, or Navy. I started out on an Army base. I'll always wear an Army uniform. I'm glad to wear an Army uniform. I asked for Army, and I'll still wear that even if I serve in another branch. In the Army, I like the physical challenge. I like the discipline. Last year, I trained for and completed a 30-mile endurance race, Army race. So running with a 33-pound ruck, carrying the canoe, and paddling, and then ending with running it for 30 miles. And so it was pretty neat to be able to do that. Although I still have a spot on my back which is itchy from where my ruck rubbed. CFB Shiloh is located in Manitoba, which is both the geographical center of Canada. We're directly north of North Dakota. Minot, North Dakota is about a 4-hour drive from where we are. So if that helps you place us at all. CFB Shiloh is a very small base, but I like to think that it punches above its weight class. We have an infantry battalion there and an artillery regiment, both of which have earned battle honors in World War I, World War II, Korea, and many international missions, including the former Yugoslavia and Afghanistan. We also have a training school there for infantry and artillery, as well as leadership courses. So CFB Shiloh's most notable claim to fame is that we're the home for artillery in Canada. We have the regimental offices there and the most complete artillery museum in Canada. So it's a pretty neat place. We have 5 chaplains in Shiloh, one in each at the infantry and artillery units, one each to the Catholic and Protestant chapels, and our team leader. It truly is a good place to be. We have a great team, and it's really a privilege to serve there. My job there is to oversee St. Barbara's Protestant Chapel, as well as provide chaplain care to some of the sub-units on the base. So I serve the Signal Corps on the base, base ammo, and the training center. Base ammo is pretty neat because every once in a while they blow things up and stuff like that. It's no coincidence that our chapel is named for St. Barbara. She's the patron saint for artillery engineers, combat engineers, armorers, and miners, anyone dealing with explosives. The story goes that in the early 3rd century, Barbara converted to Christianity. Her father disapproved, and he had her tried and condemned to death. And on the way home from when she was put to death, her father was killed suddenly by lightning, and his body is said to have been consumed. Later, when Marco Polo returned with gunpowder from the Far East, and it began to be used in warfare and in mining and engineering, St. Barbara was adopted by those who worked with explosives. And the idea of death from above is particularly appealing for those in artillery. So we have St. Barbara's Chapel there. And that story is on the plaque that I gave to Father Paul and to Bishop Lesseps. It's a gift that we give to our folks when they post out from our chapel. So it's a pleasure to be able to pass one of those along each to them. As Canadians, we have a very close working relationship with the American military. For instance, in Shiloh, we often have the B-52s from Minot come up and use our bombing ranges. And I've been out there and seen that. It truly is an impressive sight to see them come in and have the bombs blow up. Our chaplains do exchange programs with yours. We have our chaplain training for religious area assessment, which is something that we do that advises to the chain of command. And we do that with your chaplains at Fort Jackson. In operations all over the world, we work really closely with your military, and I know that there is a two-way respect for each other's professionalism and dedication. I'm proud to be invited here this morning. I'm proud to serve both God and country and to be here with you where I know military service is highly appreciated. I want to ask you a question this morning. So I get a drink of water. I want to ask you the question. Hold you in suspense as I ask you the question. Can people change? Now, the modern day parable is told of the fox and the scorpion who both arrived at the bank of a river and both wanted to cross at the same time. The scorpion begged the fox to let him climb on his back so the fox could swim over to the other side. Now, the fox was highly skeptical of this arrangement, as you can imagine. He was a little worried that he would get to the other side or maybe be stung along the way. And so he challenged the scorpion on this. You'll just sting me along the way, he said. The scorpion said, no, I won't do that, I promise. And they went back and forth with this for quite some time until finally they came to an agreement that the fox would allow the scorpion to climb on his back and swim across the river. And the scorpion would not sting him. Well, all went well until they were just about to climb out of the water on the other side of the bank. And the fox felt that nasty sting on his back, and he felt betrayed by the scorpion and asked him, what did you just do? You promised not to do that. And the scorpion said, well, I am what I am. That modern day parable is often told, I'm glad that people see some humor in that. It was meant to be funny. Sometimes people don't always understand that preachers tell jokes sometimes. Modern day parables are often told to illustrate the belief that people fundamentally can't change at heart, that they are who they are, and that they will not change. What I want to say this morning is that people can and do change. They can and do change with the right motivation, and that the resurrection, which we celebrate here this morning on Easter Sunday, was fundamentally a life-changing event for those who were there. So I want to explain that this morning and draw some application. And I promise that even though I'm Baptist, that I have adapted this for a different audience, that often in the Baptist circles it may be quite a long message, but I promise not to hold you past, say, 2 or 3 this afternoon. People changed on that first Easter Sunday morning. First of all, because they experienced the resurrection. In Acts chapter 1, verse 3, we read that after Jesus' suffering, he presented himself to them and gave many convincing proofs that he was alive. He appeared to them over a period of 40 days and spoke about the kingdom of God. So he gave them many convincing proofs. And you might ask, what were those proofs? Well, first of all, they actually saw Jesus die. This was a public execution. Crucifixion wasn't an execution, it was public. and they saw Jesus die, and there's ample proof that Jesus was dead. Crucifixion was excruciating and deadly, and Jesus really was dead by the time the soldiers stabbed him up underneath the ribs. Now, there's been lots of medical stuff written on this over the years, and Jesus, we can be confident, was dead when they placed him in the tomb. Even if he had not been dead when they placed him in, to lay in the dampness and in that spot for a couple days, he would not have survived that after all that he'd been through. It's not reasonable to think that he would have survived, that somehow he might have rolled back the stone, gotten out of the grave clothes somehow, rolled back the stone, fought off the infantry that were there. And if any of you know anything about infantry, and Roman infantry in particular, they didn't scare easily. So it's not reasonable to think that somehow Jesus, or even the disciples coming along, would have scared off the infantry. The Roman army was fierce and it wasn't going to happen. So they saw him die. They saw him placed in the tomb. They saw the empty tomb later on. They saw the grave clothes that were there. They were still in place with no body inside. On its own, it doesn't mean much, but it's still important that this man, Jesus, was no longer in the tomb. They saw him alive. They saw him with their own eyes. Now, I don't know how many times you and I both said, I'll believe it when I see it. Well, they weren't any different. In Monteagle, New Brunswick, where I served in my last civilian church, so it's above Maine, and in the city there, they have a tourist site there called Monteagle. And so if you've ever been, it's not the only place where they have these things, but it's an optical illusion where if you park your car and you put it in neutral, your car appears to roll uphill. Now, it's all optical illusion. And for many years I thought, well, only simple people would really believe that this would be. But one day my mother was visiting with us, and we'd never gone to see this before, and we were looking for something to do, so we all piled in our van, and we went over. And we pulled up to the designated spot, and I put the car in neutral. Lo and behold, the car rolled uphill. Like, whoa, I have 2 master's degrees. Like, whoa, like this is just blowing my mind. Okay, we did it 6 times. Like, until Jan just said, that's enough. We tried it forwards, we tried it backwards. You know, I got out and there was water running down the ditch. Okay, so I know gravity's still working. And but I had to see it with my own eyes to believe it. Well, those disciples saw Jesus with their own eyes. They really did. And it means so much when we see it for ourselves. They saw Jesus with their own eyes. You know, not only did they see Jesus, but they touched him. The women at the tomb held his feet. I love Thomas later on. Thomas, I think, is one of the most authentic disciples. Because he's the guy, I think, most like us. He's the guy that said, unless I touch him myself, I'm not going to believe. And what did he do? He touched him. You know, he wasn't predisposed to believe. And he became convinced when he touched. They ate with Jesus. I don't know if ghosts exist or not, but I do know that if ghosts did exist, they don't eat. Well, Jesus ate with the disciples. And some of you may question the fact that they ate fish, but they ate together. They had meals together. People saw Jesus not just one at a time, but they also saw him in groups. You know, one person might think that they saw something. 2 people, not as likely, but we see in Scripture that Jesus appeared up to 500 at a time. Luke tells us that it was over a 40-day period as well. So this happened over a good period of time. Lots of people saw Jesus. The disciples experienced the resurrection. They could testify to it with their because they'd seen it with their own eyes. They touched Jesus. They ate with him. He taught them. They lived life together. And the experience of the resurrection fundamentally changed their lives. It changed the direction from where they were going. You know, regular people like Peter and John became leaders. After Jesus ascended into heaven, you know, who is it that steps up? You know, these unlikely fishermen step up to lead the early church. Peter and John, and with the other apostles and disciples, they turned a group of people of about 70 at that time into a worldwide movement, and that's why we're here this morning. Can people change? people can change, can't they? The resurrection fundamentally changed them, proved that people can change. The resurrection still changes people. I think about a man in one of my churches where I served in Nova Scotia on the east coast of Canada. And this guy was pretty gruff, but just about as smart as anyone on the planet with a piece of machinery. If he couldn't move it with a piece of heavy machinery, it probably couldn't be moved. If he couldn't figure it out, it probably couldn't be figured out. He was one of these guys, only had a grade 4 education, but new machinery, new heavy equipment. And worked for the largest construction company in Canada. We always saw his wife in church. She was very faithful, and we knew that his mother attended an Anglican church just down the road from ours. And so there were devout people in his family, but he really, and especially in his younger years, lived a pretty rough life. And here he'd been quite a drinker. Life had slowed him down a little bit. When I met him, he was in his 60s, still working pretty hard, but even still. And then his mother died. And that hit him pretty hard, as it would anyone else. He was visiting the graveyard one day, and in his grief, he was trying to find some sort of hope, some sort of meaning in her death. She'd been very devout Anglican, and he knew that, and he knew what it meant to his mother. And in the corner of his eye, as he's sitting there in his grief, he spots a pileated woodpecker come down and sit on a branch about 10 feet. Now, if you know anything about these birds, they just don't come close to humans. They like to stay they like to give lots of distance. It came down and sat really close to him, and this was a sign to him from God that, first of all, he knew where his mother was now, living the resurrection life with Jesus Christ. And this was a sign to him. He was a changed man on the spot. And we started seeing him in church with his wife faithfully after that. And one day he invited me out for a drive. He always had a pretty nice truck from work, and he had a couple of 100 acres of property that he was building some roads on, and one of his retirement dreams was to set up a quarry. But you don't hear that often. But set up a quarry on his property, and this would provide him some income along the way in his retirement. And he'd like to take me out every once in a while and show me the progress. And so we're out driving on his property one day, and he tells me the story about this. And here's this gruff, tough guy, and tears just streaming down his face as he tells the story about how God met him at his mother's graveside. And he was truly a changed man. I had the privilege of baptizing him by immersion, and he told that story to our church. I was with him many times when he told the story to whoever we were with. I know that he told that story hundreds of times and just shed buckets of tears every time. Can people change? People can change because of the resurrection. They can change. Truly was a different man. That's the way it was for those early disciples. The resurrection meant so much to them that they had to tell people. They had seen it, they had experienced it, and they had to tell people. They were changed people because of it. It was so extraordinary, so powerful, that every single one of them laid down their lives for the gospel, to tell other people. The Apostle John was the only one that didn't die a martyr's death. And even then, he was exiled and died in exile because of his faith. Peter, the man who denied Jesus 3 times, was crucified upside down on a cross because he didn't feel it was proper to be crucified the same way as his Lord. John was the only one not murdered. These were ordinary people doing extraordinary things because they witnessed the extraordinary, and it changed their lives. Now, most of us aren't called to do something extraordinary. Most of us are pretty normal people. Truth be told, some of us just have trouble keeping just the basics of the faith, don't we? Without even thinking about trying to accomplish something as bold as we see them doing in early church. But that doesn't mean that we can't experience the joy and the hope of the resurrection on this day and on each day. When they laid Jesus in the tomb, all hope appeared to be lost. For all dead people don't come back to life, do they? Well, I love the fact that Easter is on April Fool's Day. Surprise! hope appear to be lost today? As you sit here, as I stand here, do you have a situation in your life where all hope seems to be gone? I can think of situations where we might easily lose hope around sickness or illness or disease, financially, because of work or lack of work or a difficult relationship or a difficult situation. All these things might cause us to lose hope. But there was no more hopeless situation than death, and that was the case when Jesus died. The one thing, at least, that the resurrection shows us is that even death is not the end of the story. God the Father who raised Jesus Christ is still at work in our world today. He did not stop at that time. He's still working in our world. The power of the resurrection is still at work in this world. And just as the resurrection changed the early followers of Jesus, may the power of the resurrection change us. May it bring us joy where there is despair and hope when all seems lost. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, on this Easter Sunday morning, we're so glad, in one way, that it's April Fool's Day. The great cosmic April Fool's joke was that Jesus would stay in the grave. We thank you that Jesus did not stay in the grave, that he rose again bodily, physically. That he came and he taught and he appeared to so many that we have proof of that. And that proof changed those early disciples. It changes us still today and gives us the hope that we need. We thank you. May that hope, may the hope and power of the resurrection be evident to each of us here this morning. We ask in Jesus' name.
Amen. Service continues with the offertory. Remember the words of the Lord Jesus. How he said it is more blessed to give than to receive.